All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here talking about real music in real time for a couple of real people out there just like you and just like me. Yeah, a couple meaning, out of close to 80K, I have 1,000 views on a video from yesterday. It's just what it is. Thank you, algorithm. If you want to break the algorithm, make sure you like the videos, subscribe to the channel, consider joining Patreon because that will offset the coming revenue apocalypse because it is coming, right? It just I had a little reprieve thanks to Eric Clapton, but it just reverts back to what it was before, and unfortunately, I can't interview Eric every month. I've been trying to get Roger Waters to come on. Um, don't know how that's going, but I'll keep you in the loop if something happens there. Before I get going about talking Deep Purple, Glenn Hughes, which it's just these geezer rockers, right, are still doing the same things that they've been doing for how many years. And Glenn Hughes calls out the members of Deep Purple. By the way, DP has an album that's coming, right? And a couple of songs out there. And I like them, right? I like Deep Purple, but this feuding that dates back decades now is just really depressing. All right, before I get into the Glenn Hughes spat with his former band, the Leaf D. Liu band, you got to check this out. You're not going to be disappointed listening to this. The album is called Mighty Fine, and I have to say it is mighty fine. I'm going to do the trifold CD thing here so you can. I mean, look at that. I mean, all the way from Holland, this showed up in my mailbox the other day. Faster shipping in some cases than when I order stuff here in the United States. Things that are kind of specialty oriented, they take longer. So again, let me just show this off. If you're a fan of the Allman Brothers, I'm just going to say it because it's very derivative of an Allman Brothers album, but a little more West Coast. I described it that way on Patreon, and someone said I had hit the nail right on the head. Boom, just Allman Brothers with a little bit of a West Coast flavor to it, a little more accessible, not as hardcore, I guess, as the old Allman Brothers stuff used to be. Anyway, check it out. Leaf D. Liu, all right, doesn't roll off the tongue. Leaf D. Liu band. You can stream it. You can buy a CD from Holland. Eventually, they will ship it to you, and it's a conversation starter, right? And if not, you'll have it in your car and you can play it and it'll be great. That is if your car has a CD player. I've been hearing more and more, Dave, I mean, I don't have a CD player in my car. What are you talking about? Never mind. I drive a car from 2011 and it's got a CD player. Doesn't always work properly, but when it does, man, I'm just cruising down the road in my own world. Now, all right, this Glenn Hughes thing. So Glenn Hughes did an interview. If you don't know about Glenn Hughes, he used to be in Deep Purple back in the day, back in the mid 70s. So he was part of this Mach 3 lineup, Mach 2.5. I don't know how many Machs there are. There are many when it comes to Deep Purple, and quite frankly, I've lost track which Mach we're on. It's like which version of the band that we're currently dealing with. I'd say it's like Mach 8 or something. I think the classic rock commentators stopped doing the Mach stuff years ago, but in any event, so he had this conversation with a pretty well-known guitar publication, and he said this: "I will never speak to any of them again." Talking about his former bandmates in Deep Purple, simply because they were rude. And this is regarding the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. If you can't bury the hatchet, obviously they didn't want Glenn Hughes or David Coverdale there for whatever reason, like they didn't exist. I don't think, did Joe Lynn Turner get invited to that? Probably not. Because again, they inducted maybe what, the first 15 years of Deep Purple or so. I don't know how they figured that out, but that included David Coverdale and Glenn Hughes. By the way, Glenn Hughes is still a great vocalist. Not so much with David Coverdale, but Glenn Hughes, he's currently out there doing a whole Deep Purple show. So if you have the opportunity to see Glenn Hughes, I would go ahead and do it. Um, he said these guys were very, very hurtful. He says, I didn't give a bleep. That's a word that starts with F and ends with CK. Actually, because I knew they were rude to begin with. I was the only sober man there. So he's implying that back in 2016, when they were inducted into the Hall of Fame, that the old geezers, who are much older now, but 2016, they were still geezers, uh, they were drinking, maybe celebrating. I don't know. But he says, I was the only sober man there. He says, I don't care about those guys. Gillan was rude to me on stage. I went to congratulate him. He looked me in the eyes like I didn't exist. The guy has a problem with me, period. He says, I'll let him run with it. I feel bad for him. I'm really sorry about his wife. Now, Ian's wife of 40 years died in 2022, so which was sad. Her name was Braun, and they publicized that and they talked about that. That was a real big deal. Gillan obviously was really heartbroken. So, Glenn's saying here, I tried to reach out to him when his wife passed away. He doesn't want to know me. Okay. Glenn said someone in Deep Purple's lineup blocked him and David Coverdale from performing at the band's Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. He didn't name the person, but mentioned they ended up not singing as planned. So maybe they were planning not to sing. Maybe that was part of the agreement. Yeah, you guys, you can show up. Yeah, you were part of Deep Purple, but you don't get to participate. That's really crappy, isn't it? By the way, earlier in the article, Glenn Hughes talks about how David Bowie told him back in the day that he needed to change up his image and not be stuck doing one thing. So Glenn Hughes next year he's ditching all of the Deep Purple stuff. His whole show is going to change. So that'll be interesting. But what is he going to do if he's not performing Deep Purple songs? It's just, and it's kind of interesting because, again, Glenn wasn't attached to some of what Deep Purple did, obviously, that made them famous. He came along a little later in the mid to late 70s, from what I remember. And those were critically acclaimed albums. Those albums that he did or he was a part of, those are great Deep Purple albums. But it seems that the Gillan led Purple is really what most people remember, whether that's the, what is it, Mach 2 version or the Mach 4 version. I mean, I don't know how many versions there are. There are quite a few of them, but I'm a Deep Purple fan. And those guys, if they're still drinking heavily, they need to sober up. Come on, man. I mean, a couple of those guys are getting close to 80 years old, right? So it's time. I'm surprised that they're still going because I thought they were going to quit, but they're really digging their new guitarist and they're out there putting out new material and they're touring. So there you have it. Deep Purple, the saga of Deep Purple. And it isn't about Richie Blackmore. Typically it's about, he didn't even talk about Richie. How did Richie not get in this article? I don't know. Here they are again, one more time for the Leaf DLU band. Sometimes I think to myself, why am I doing this? Why am I scouring? And then I find something and I'm like, I got to order that. I mean, I just really dig this album. It's called Mighty Fine. And yes, you can see the mushrooms. So, you are really close to where the Allman Brothers used to live. Just great stuff, right? And if you want to say they're copying or it's derivative, we need this to continue. This is great music, and these guys are carrying the torch forward into the future. And for this channel, if you want to help me carry the channel into the future for many years to come, please think about supporting on Patreon or becoming a YouTube member, or even buy me a coffee, which is kind of like a one-time thing. I mean, you could do it as many times as you want, but you like me, but you don't like me that much. You're like, yeah, monthly, really? But I have a lot of patrons, over 300, I think now, which is great. And if you want to just say, hey, thanks for doing that Eric Clapton interview, we had a lot of people do that. People who had never seen this channel before. It was a good way to say thank you, but this way you don't have to stick around. You can just leave them a quick message, drop $5 or whatever it is, a couple of coffees. It's a Starbucks latte, so you're talking like $12.99, right? So that's helpful. I don't actually drink the coffee, by the way. And people have asked me, so you must drink a lot of coffee. I'm like, no, it's just this is a way to do a one-time donation. It's kind of a fun way to anyway. If I'm explaining it, that's too much. I shouldn't have to do that. But anyway, buy me a coffee. Check that out. Patreon, YouTube memberships. And yes, I'm done. I'm done. I'm leaving. All right. Thanks for watching. God bless everyone. Pray for peace in the Middle East. And I will be back soon. So stay tuned for more content.